Dear colleagues all over the world, many thanks to the Young Academies for the invitation to comment on the matters of diversity and inclusiveness. As a mathematician, I cannot avoid starting from definitions. Science has, in essence, two core pillars. First, obtaining new and essential knowledge, and second, communication that to others. The first pillar is strong only if we include and test all possible ways of addressing the matter. People with different age, having different education in different fields or coming from different cultural environments, ask different questions or ask questions differently. This intrinsic variety guarantees that we shall have the best possible information of today, organized in the best possible manner. This is what science offers today, not the final truth. In particular, small countries like Estonia do not have the luxury of not including all talented people for this purpose. Now the entire world is becoming too small for the same reason. And the integration of various ideas, crossing many boundaries of language, culture, gender, race, you name it, is becoming a must. Rephrasing Esther Ora's, we never know whose question or viewpoint opens the way to the future that is worth living in. The other side of the coin is communication of this knowledge to others. This is the ultimate point of science for society, to make the world constantly a better place for living. Be it innovation, which means solving new challenges with new approaches, as Peter Drucker mentioned a long time ago, or shaping the legal system based on the best knowledge, as Helen Eenmaa recommended today. The competitiveness of countries, regions, and even continents, more and more depends on the ability of society to extract the best knowledge from the smartest people. This process involves the entire academic community, and of course academies and young academies. In many occasions, their members have the very best and timely information. Also here, as Mario Raju stressed, cooperation is the key. It is thus natural that many academies and consortia of academies put a lot of emphasis on giving good advice to policy and decision making, like the European Academies Science Advisory Council, whom I represent here. Giving advice is a delicate matter, already because scientists and decision makers speak different languages. They rely on different timescales. They often have quite different understanding of how the world functions. Those who need advice usually have no time for listening to long explanations. The given advice must be short, concise, and therefore containing almost no details. And of course, it must be tuned to the level of the existing listening capacity of the partner. This is a feature, not a bug, but it normally means the need for severe simplification of the message, except if your partner was Dr. Angela Merkel. The devil is usually hidden in details, we often say. By the way, the original expression actually was completely different. God is in the details. The meaning is God is living or reveals itself in the details. This saying is far more than 100 years old. In the United States, it was attributed to German-born architect Ludwig Mies van der Rohe, but it has been used in French by Gustave Flaubert much earlier, in the 1800s. The idea was that whatever one does should be done with great care and not overlooking any detail. Because the truth, if it exists at all, is in the details. In other words, it becomes evident if you are able to work out properly every single item and look into details. The work of devil is therefore removing or hiding some of the essential details. But this is what we have to do when giving the best advice. When condensing the information to the necessary level, we just have to remove some nuances. We just have to limit the diversity of opinions. We have to leave aside less probable options for solutions. The side effect, sadly, is limited inclusiveness and often biasing towards a small set of the strongest arguments and conclusions of today. The golden rules of science advice generally amplify this tendency. They are formulated by the chief science advisors to the European Commission as follows. Firstly, the advice must be based on the cutting-edge science, the very best knowledge. Secondly, it should be made public. Thirdly, it should come from a person or a body with a clear mandate. Putting these rules critically into simple English means that science advice is by definition an extremely elitist action, as these scientists who make most of the research and provide diversity are out of the game by definition. It is often oversimplified to make sure that large part of society could understand the point. And finally, it is provided by a kind of aristocrats, even if they rotate. Is this really what we want? There are more obstacles in this environment from the viewpoint of the current discussion. The arguments and conclusions behind the given advice are estimated from the point of view of the advisor with a mandate, who is often a middle-aged white man coming from natural or life sciences, where scientometry is almost equal to God. There is nothing wrong in the Matthew effect. In this field, it works so that the one who has already provided a good advice is invited to consult again and again and again. But it is definitely wrong that the other side of the coin, so-called Matilda effect, implicitly starts to work. It is not only about less frequently engaging female scientists and advisors. It is very easy to overlook the opinions and warnings of less engaged members of the academic community. Be they, for example, mothers who have to take the children from the school or kindergarten, or international researchers who are not fluent in the local language, as Ville Laukkanen stressed. Even though the damage might not be crucial in single situations, the cumulative damage is substantial. Research results are usually understood in the same manner in the entire academic landscape. The situation is different when we try to convert them into good advice on national level. The features that form our richness, such as cultural diversity, often start to play an impeding role. Because even seemingly identical words may have different nuances in different cities and regions. And this feature often makes transfer of operational advice across boundaries of language or cultural spaces virtually impossible. This is exactly what we saw during the first year of COVID pandemic, a real cacophony of advice. This was one reason for frequent shifts of policy goals. We also saw a fairly massive reaction of society in terms of anti-vaccination movement. It has clear roots in this cacophony. The explanation is actually almost trivial. In the formulation of Rainer Grundmann, as a gamut of social science tells us, rejection of official information is related to a lack of trust in public institutions. This is at least partially a failure of the scientific community. A similar but much more massive failure was not being able to forecast the invasion of Russia into Ukraine. We can do better by being more inclusive and by giving decent attention to views of fellow scientists who are not exactly in the center of the distribution of all researchers, but who work specifically on the problem, or who can see the problem from a small distance. For example, taking in the future much more seriously the warnings coming from small countries who have a powerful and brutal big neighbor. Thank you very much for listening.